Hey,
So I'll start with a short introduction. So welcome to everyone who is watching. I am here with Al Nilsen, who was with Sega of America from I'm trying to think now, 1980. I'll get
February
there. Sorry,
1980, February 23rd, 1989.
February 23rd, 1989. There we go, and that was until 1993, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
So I will start with my first question, which is quite a generic question. Why did you personally choose to join Sega?
One, I thought it was a phenomenal opportunity. Here was an exciting new platform, very much different from the Nintendo NES system that was out there. Um, it had a great brand because Sega was so strong in the arcades and people knew about it. And so I saw an opportunity here to go and grab a piece of the market that Nintendo really wasn't going after. The people who had left Nintendo and went to the arcades to play Sega games, well, now we could go and not only have them in the arcades, but we could also have them at home. So I thought it was a great opportunity.
That's true. When you did first join Sega, were you already familiar with the video game industry, or was it your experience in the toy industry that led you into it?
I had been in the video game industry for about a decade by that
All
time.
right.
I started out as the video game buyer for the JCPenney stores and catalog. So over 600 stores and as well as a mail order catalog.
All right.
And I took them from being the number two video, for actually they were a distant, probably number three or four video game retailer in America to the largest video game retailer in America, beating Sears. And from there, I was brought into Mattel to go into the Mattel marketing department on Intellivision, up against Atari and ColecoVision in those
All
days.
right.
So well, I had a long history. I worked with Nolan Bushnell on the Nemo project, which begat great games like Sewer Shark and Night Trap and all of those full motion video games, which was all designed for a separate console. But the price of DRAMs just made it too expensive, so our $200 console would have been like a $500 console, which just
Oh, right.
wasn't reasonable back then.
Um, when, when you initially joined Sega, were they already working on a mascot to rival Nintendo, or had they not really considered that yet?
They were starting, and I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
They had started having a contest to create a design for a character. It was basically all through Sega Japan, where anybody could come up with a design. You know, I wanted to be a hedgehog. I wanted to be a gerbil. I wanted to be a lion with a giraffe's neck, whatever. And so that was going on behind the scenes. The first time I heard about Sonic was probably June or July of 1989 when our executive vice president, Shinobu Toyota, walks into my office and closes the door and says, Mr. Nakayama, who is the head of Sega, has chosen you. And it's like, okay, what's that about? Probably is not a good thing. And then he tells me about the mascot contest and says they're happy with the two finalists that they have, but they know that in order for it to be a mascot, it has to be a success in the United States. So the choice was mine. And it was like, okay. So he opens up the envelope and pulls out these two drawings. And the first one was this egg-shaped characters, very, very much coming out of Japanese animation. I could see why it would work in Japan, but in the U.S. it would be very preschool, very 3, 4, 5-year-old. Kind of weebles wobble what they don't fall down, if you're familiar with those toys. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, what else do they have? And then the next thing was a hedgehog. What's a hedgehog? We don't know what hedgehogs are over here.
Right.
Uh, The groundhogs were never, we don't deal with hedgehogs in the U.S. And this one was blue, and his name was Sonic, and he had spiked hair, and he had a rock band, and he had a girlfriend who was a human who looked like Marilyn Monroe and was named Madonna. So I've got Weebles, and I've got a hedgehog. And I chose Sonic because it was the lesser of two evils. And I never expected anything to come out of it. I knew that Naka was going to go and do it, and I love the Fantasy Star series of games and things like that. But still, the idea of take this character and create not only a phenomenal game, but an entire mascot behind it is not something that normally happens. But in this case, it did, and in this case, it was phenomenal.
Absolutely. Personally, I loved Sonic as a kid. I actually first discovered Sonic through one of the animated series before I had actually played one of the games, which in a way worked as very good advertisement, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
You also released a Master System version of Sonic the Hedgehog, albeit pretty quietly in comparison to obviously the main Mega Drive Genesis version. What influenced the decision to also make a version for the less successful Master System?
It wasn't necessarily that we made a version for the Master System; it was that we made a version for Game Gear.
Okay.
And then, because Master System and Game Gear are very similar in terms of systems, we could take a Game Gear title and port it over to the Master System very easily. The Master System was a very, very small piece of our business. That wasn't to say that it wasn't an important piece. It just was a small piece. It wasn't getting the television advertising. We wanted to support the people who had bought Master Systems, and we knew that one day they would go over to the Genesis system, but until they made that decision, we wanted to continue to support the Master System there, while also simultaneously, and more importantly from a revenue standpoint, helping launch Game Gear.
That makes sense. That actually answered my next question, which was about the Game Gear version, wondering if that was a port from the Master System version, obviously being the other way round, which makes a lot of sense.
The thing is, in the UK and actually in the rest of the world, the Master System had much greater success than in the US. In the US, it never got above 5-6% market share against Nintendo. The Master System, going to 1995, 96, 97, was still being sold around the world. It was the number one system in Brazil. It was actually being introduced into countries that had never had Sega before as a brand new system, even though Genesis / Mega Drive had been on the market for 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
All right, it's actually interesting when I was reading through Console Wars. Apologies while I just move because the internet connection seems to be fading a little bit. When I was reading Console Wars, I found it very interesting because over here in the UK, the situation seemed to be very different to what it was in America, because the Nintendo fad hadn't really kicked off over here. I mean, the NES sold well, and it was a popular console, but it didn't quite hit here by storm like it did in America. I'll just move this. I seem to be losing signal at the moment.
It's breaking up. I can't hear you at all, and you are now frozen.
Okay, is this any easier? I've come a little closer to the router. Is your video deselected?
It
was.
I think yours was, but okay, let me see if I can. There we
There we
go.
go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, so over here in the UK, the NES fad didn't quite hit as hard as it did in America. The NES was popular, but it didn't really hit the UK by storm. And so, even from the beginning, from my perspective anyway, when I was growing up, Sega and Nintendo were much more on equal lines already, really, over here. Um, I never personally owned a home console until the Sega Saturn, and but my friends, a few of my friends had a Master System as I was growing up, and a couple of them got Mega Drives later on. The only thing that Nintendo really had that was really successful from my perspective over here was the Game Boy. Um, but besides that, Sega was really the only home console company I knew much about, to be honest. I didn't know much about Nintendo even having home consoles as I was growing up, which is an interesting contrast. Um, what was I going to move on to next? I've not got my list of questions with me now. Um, oh yeah, was there a specific reason for the naming difference in the Mega Drive and Genesis? Obviously being...
Absolutely. We couldn't call the system Mega Drive in the U.S. We were legally prohibited because someone owned the name Mega Drive, and so therefore we couldn't go and call it Mega Drive. So they were looking for, and this was actually just before I started Sega, and they had come up with 6 names that had cleared legal. One was Cyclone after the roller coaster at Coney Island. There were 4 others. One had something to do with a fox, and there was a fox logo. And then there was Genesis. And the first thing I actually had to do when I joined Sega was to go and do some quick research to find out what these names meant to people and which they preferred. Our preference was Genesis. We thought it was a great name, but we wanted to see what people thought. And when we did the research, it came back, yeah, Genesis was the best game. And it meant to them 2 things. One, Genesis in the Bible in the beginning. And the second was from Star Trek, the Genesis Project, which we thought was great. So we were really happy, and we thought it was a great name. And while the rest of the world knows it as Mega Drive, we know it as Genesis, and I just think it's a better name than Mega Drive. But that's my own preference.
That's fair enough. One of the big things that happened during the SNES and Genesis race was the release of Mortal Kombat, and this was one of those games that really sparked the media's interest in terms of its excessive violence. Something we now commonly hear about in the media about nearly every adult game release. The media constantly trying to link nearly every real-life violent event to video games in some way, like this guy played games and thus that's why. What's your opinion? Do you think that violence in video games in any way affects people and how they are as a person?
Yeah, I think you did a good job covering this in your interview with Tom Kalinske. Are some people affected? Probably, but people are affected by a whole lot of things, and some of them that are very innocent in terms of how people are affected. It's what I'm very happy about was that we established the rating system, which is used today. And we were the leaders in it, and we tried to get Nintendo involved, and Nintendo wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. And we established our own rating system before it was Nintendo finally joined and said, okay, yeah, we need an industry rating system. And then the Sega rating system kind of morphed into the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, ESRB, which is being used to this day. So we're giving everyone, whether it's your parent or you're buying the game for yourself, a little insight into what's the game in terms of the violence content. And unlike movies where you just have a single letter, we have descriptors in the video games that tell you the type of violence. I forget these exact, but it might be animated violence, cartoon violence, sex, language, etc.
Yeah.
So we went into much more detail, and I think that's the thing all of us at Sega were very, very proud of, that we went and did this. And this was before there were any problems, coming from Congress and everything else. The other thing about Mortal Kombat is that, the people keep going and saying, oh, Sega, put the blood in. Well, the thing was you went into the arcades, and that's where it was. And most of our players were young adults and teenagers. What Sega did was before, Nintendo was selling only to 9 to 12-year-olds, and primarily the 9 to 12-year-old boys. We were selling to teenagers and young adults and adults. So we really broadened the entire market to what it is today. If Sega wasn't around, the video game industry today, who knows, could be just Nintendo playing, 6 to 12-year-old boys, as it was back then.
It's actually very interesting that looking at it from the perspective of today, where we've had various video game rating boards for so many years now, it's one of those things that just seems like common sense now because we've had it for so long. Whereas I guess at the time it was just...
We couldn't believe that Nintendo did not want to go anywhere near this. And it's like, especially since they were projecting such a family image. Well, if you are, don't you want to let, the parents of your customers know about that? And their answer was no.
Which is very interesting because the point they made, while fair, their point being that they didn't make games that were bad for children, but at the same time, having a video games rating system kind of opens the doors to allow you to make that kind of game without repercussions of, young kids seeing any sort of graphic images that they shouldn't be seeing. I guess to me, just because I grew up with it, it seems kind of nonsensical to think that anyone would disagree with having a video games rating system, especially as obviously movies have had them for years. It just kind of makes sense to me. Was there any... Sorry,
the violent games like Mortal Kombat were a very small portion of our business. While Mortal Kombat was a big seller, when you take all of what Sega sold, the games that had that violence to them were a very, very small portion of the revenue that was there. Sonic was still number one. Sports games were number two.
Going back to something you had mentioned before with when Sonic was originally introduced to you, as with this human girlfriend and the fangs, etc. As marketing director, were you worried about the image that originally Sonic had, about how you'd be able to market that in Western markets?
On that day when I first saw it, I never thought that anything was going to come of it, so that didn't come into play. The only thing I told Shinobu Toyota when I saw it was, we'll take the hedgehog, get rid of the rock band, and get rid of the girlfriend. I didn't get it even into the fangs, because if they were going to develop a game, I didn't want the rock band because people have very specific musical tastes. And if it is something that you don't like, we can turn off a portion of the game audience um, who just don't like the music without even looking at the game. And then Madonna and Sonic, that was just taking us into a whole different place. It's kind of like I if you're going to go and develop relationships in the game and things like that, that takes away from the gameplay. Give me just great quality gameplay. Um, and the fangs and stuff we didn't worry about until after we saw the first playables of it. And that's when Tom Kalinske, myself, and one of my product managers, Madeline Schroeder, we sat down and was like, okay, how this thing is phenomenal gameplay. This can really be the hit that it is. What do we need to do to really turn this into a mascot? And Madeline, I jokingly call her Sonic's orthodontist because it was her job to get rid of the fangs, which was something that they didn't want to go and do. But, Sonic was interesting because I happened to be in Japan and I was there every month and a half, and I was going through the R&D studios, seeing what was going on, and went into Naka's area, and here I see Sonic in kind of wireframe mode, and I see this character just flying through, and I had never seen such speed in a video game before, and it was incredible. And then the next station over, they were working on the backgrounds, and these beautiful, rich graphics, highly detailed, brilliant colors. And these were the backgrounds of the Green Hill Zone and some of the other zones. And I'm going, can we do that speed with those backgrounds? And they're going, yeah. And it was then that, okay, we've got a shot here, And it really wasn't even playable at that stage. And it was about a month and a half later that we were able to get a first playable that combined the backgrounds and combined the animation, and we were able to play it. And that's when we knew that this had a chance. So we were then starting to go and figure out what do we need to go and do to go and market this. And part of it was putting a lid on any publicity. So we didn't talk about it internally beyond a small group of people. Though there are a lot of people right now who will tell you that they were with Sonic at the very beginning. We weren't. Because we really kept a lid on it. And we prevented them from showing Sonic at the Tokyo Game Show where they wanted to show the gameplay. Because we really knew each month as we got new builds that it really could be our secret weapon. And then I started doing research where I took people who loved Mario and did research with them and showed them the new Mario on Super NES that wasn't out in the US yet. We had Japanese versions. And Sonic, which no one had ever seen, and asked them to play them. And the great thing was 80% of Mario lovers chose Sonic over Mario. And then we knew that Sonic really was going to be the phenomenon that it was. And we put all of our marketing efforts into high gear to really thwart Nintendo's launch in the US of Super NES.
Which clearly paid off very well, ending up with such a large market share of the Western market, considering what Sega was at with the Master System. It's quite incredible how it turned around.
It was the shot that Nintendo never expected, which was great. No one expected it from us, which was even better. Our retailers who wanted us to succeed, but didn't think that we could go up against Nintendo. They didn't know what to expect, and they were shocked. The press was shocked. Customers were, I think, delighted and excited about it. It was just amazing how this all came together, and we had really great planning, which we kept under our proverbial hat until that was there. Going head to head in malls, and I'm a nice guy, so how could I help Nintendo? Well, I could introduce Super NES before and let people play Super NES in a Sega booth at shopping centers before Nintendo had ever had their first TV commercial. And so that people could go and see what this new system was. Oh, and by the way, also play Sonic and see how much better it was than Super NES. It was, and once again, going around the country, we let people vote, and over 80% of the people chose Sonic over Mario after they had played both of them. It was the unfair advantage that we took, and Nintendo surprisingly never reacted because they didn't believe that this little flea could go and attack their leadership position.
Looking now at over time, Sonic sort of changed multiple times. The biggest one a while back, he became a slightly darker shade of blue, became a bit taller, and as Tom explained to me, he believes part of that was attracting to an older audience some more. What are your thoughts on the most recent redesign for Sonic Boom, which is quite a drastic change for Sonic?
As I've been said many a time and been quoted many a time, and I will continue to say, get rid of the damn scarf.
With you on that.
It's and I understand it, and scarves are supposedly trendy right now, but the thing is Sonic is timeless, and you don't want to go and interfere by putting something that is trendy today and is dated tomorrow. But so I have a problem with that. Do I have a problem with Sonic changing? No, I think change can be good. There's some things that I like better than others. Haven't gotten used to Knuckles yet in Sonic Boom. That's a big change. And I actually need to talk to one of my friends who kind of spearheaded Knuckles to see what she thinks about it. And I've only seen bits and pieces of Sonic Boom. I've recorded the first two episodes, but I just haven't had a chance to go and sit down and watch them yet. But I'm excited that there's interest in Sonic. I think that the animation looks really good. And it's going to take a little bit getting used to. But that's okay. But Knuckles is going to take a little longer time to get used to, I think.
Yeah, I watched the first two episodes of the new animated series the other day, and actually, to my surprise, I was a bit worried about it. It's actually it's a very good animated show. The video game I recently got to play a part of the Wii U version, Rise of Lyric, and it's fun, but I think personally it suffers from what a lot of more recent 3D Sonic games have. It's not very fast, which is something you kind of expect from a Sonic game.
By definition, that's...
And yeah, unfortunately, that's been the main problem that really caused the redesign. There was a bit of a lack in sales, and unfortunately, it hasn't quite overcome that yet. But at the same time, it's a nice fresh start, and it gets Sonic back in the headlines and back into people's minds. And I guess that was the point in the reboot.
Sonic is a timeless character.
Mm.
I think we are all excited, a little proud, but also very, very happy that after 25 years, people are still talking about Sonic, and Sonic is still, a favorite character, and you want to have a reboot. We're excited about that, and I just enjoy it. And did I ever think that would happen? And looking at the tens of millions of cartridges that's been sold back then, no. But am I really happy that it's happened? Yeah.
What's it like for you seeing Sonic being released exclusively on Nintendo consoles? Now, obviously, thinking back, did you ever think that day would come where you're seeing Sonic released only on Nintendo?
the funny thing about it was, I know you've read Console Wars, and I hope your viewers have also. And if they haven't, go get yourself a copy of Console Wars. Even if you're not into a big video game player, it's a great human interest story. It's a great business story that's there. But is when we did a sales conference in Boca Raton, Florida, for 400 of the top retailers, and this was in 1982, where we were introducing all of our major titles for the year. And that was introducing Sonic 2 and Sonic Tuesday and everything that was going on with that. And so I was introducing this on stage with Madeline Schroeder, and we were doing kind of a back and forth type of dialogue. And we're telling about all of the marketing activities and all of the merchandise and everything that's going along and all the promotional activities. And I go and I say, and Sonic is going to be on the cover of every single video game magazine this fall. And Madeline goes to me, Al. And I go, okay, we won't be on the cover of Nintendo Power, but we're working on it. And sure enough, fast forward, a decade or so, and Sonic does end up on the cover of Nintendo Power. So that was funny. I actually sent Peter Main a letter saying, thank you for making my prediction come true. I find it a little strange, and I know about the exclusive deal that they did with Nintendo. I'd love to see what the contract was so I could understand how they could not go and do PlayStation and anything like that. I'm a mass marketer. I want to see Sonic on everything. And I'm really excited that Sonic is on, phones. And from there. Do I like, I think the series, Sonic and Mario at the Olympics. I think that was a really, good series. I like, cross-populating characters. And, Tom tells a story of how when he played against somebody who was playing as Mario in one of the games, and of course Sonic won. So those things make me happy. But personally, I would love to see, these great games being available on every single system. Because I want Sonic to be, ubiquitous on everything. Except if Sega was in the hardware business, then I'd only want to see it on Sega platforms. I wanted, I want the little blue spiky guy everywhere.
Was there anything being developed at Sega hardware-wise that really caught your eye that unfortunately never quite saw the light of day?
Nothing that really comes to mind from a hardware standpoint. They were looking at different kinds of platforms that we're in, and if you're looking at console wars, we talked about how we looked at the Silicon Graphics chipset, which ended up in Nintendo 64. So we thought that was there. At Sega Japan, no. But once again, the other thing, which I think that I know that Tom wanted, and I wanted, and Joe Miller wanted, and the rest of my colleagues wanted, was we wanted the Sega PlayStation to happen. That would truly have changed the dynamic of the entire industry.
Oh yeah.
That is something that we wish could have been pulled off. But unfortunately, Sega Japan decided no.
It's actually very unfortunate, especially when you look at what PlayStation eventually became. So I guess, do you think Sega were the first video game company to really think about CD-ROM technology as a very viable platform? Because at the time, out of the big two, you and Nintendo, Sega were the only ones who fully came through with their CD add-on, while Nintendo sort of ended up in a kind of purgatory and never fully released.
Well, I think that both Sega and Nintendo knew that the future was, CD and optical discs, um, and designing games for, the CD platform and everything the CD platform can be and all the storage is a whole new game, and it's a whole new way of thinking for our game designers, what constitutes a game. And so for us, Sega CD was a very important product because it was a learning platform. We didn't know what necessarily would work or what wouldn't work, how to go and make it better, um, and trying different things out. We knew that there was a life beyond putting, recipe books and and documentaries and photos on, which was what some initial interactive software was. How do you do great games on it? And so that's what Sega CD was all about, was you know letting doing all that work, um, but not doing it sitting in the back of the lab, doing it where everybody else could see and getting real people's feedback on it to see, what do you like? Do you like, to make your own music videos, which is, the crisscross stuff? Do you like the full motion things from Digital Pictures, which was the stuff I had worked on with Nolan Bushnell? Uh, do you love enhanced games like Sonic CD? Um, how do we go and make different things? So, that was a very, very important experiment's probably not the right word, because it was part experiment and it was part next generation. So it's kind of a combination of the two. And we invited everybody in to go and be a part of it. And that really helped us to be able to go and prepare for the future, for a system that, would be totally CD based.
I must say, I'm very thankful for the Mega CD, or the Sega CD in the US, because Sonic CD is by far my favourite Sonic game. Absolutely fantastic. Was in sort of contrast, is there anything that you wish Sega hadn't released?
32X. It's while I was at Sega, I killed the project 3 times, and it finally didn't make the light of day until after I left. Um, and I knew that we had too much on our plate. It was $150 add-on that cost more than the system itself. I knew that there was no way that we would be able to go in and deliver the quality software that we needed to be able to launch a platform, because it was a separate platform that we by itself, and there were just too many pitfalls. And you had the 2 processors inside, and so therefore you had to go and learn how to go and program for the 2 processors. And we knew that Sega CD was coming down the road. We knew that there was going to be the replacement for Genesis coming down the road, and it was just fraught with too many problems. And when Tom and I saw it for the first time in Japan, it was like, and we started asking questions like, okay, is this backward compatible with Genesis? No, we need a Genesis to work on it. And then all of these other questions, and we just kept getting answers that just didn't make sense to us. And we left that meeting with, we can't bring this thing over. It's just, this is a dead-on arrival product. I must say I am a proud owner of a 32X, brand new, never opened in the box, with a price sticker of $19.98 on it from Toys R Us. And quite honestly, I think I overpaid at that price.
It was an odd decision, in that, of course, with it being its own platform, it just sort of makes sense to release a 32-bit console. Another thing that released at the end of the Genesis's life cycle was the Sega Nomad, which played Genesis games. But that was only released in the US. Is there a reason it never made it outside of the US?
I can't speak for the marketing decisions that were made by Sega Europe or the rest of the countries around the world. Um, we were the biggest market, so I don't know if we were a test market for it. Nomad, it was great to be able to play your Genesis titles on the go. The problem was the battery life was horrendous. It's if Sega owned a battery company, then it probably would have made a lot of sense. But you would spend a fortune on batteries, or you could plug it in, but that takes away the whole idea of it being a portable. So it was an interesting product that was there. Game Gear had okay battery life, but Nomad had horrendous battery life.
Um, is there any part of you that thinks that maybe had you, Tom, Madeline, some of the others stayed at Sega for a lot longer than you did, do you think maybe things may have panned out a little differently, or do you think the kind of power struggle between SOA and SOJ would have ended the same way it did?
Who knows? I think I'm safe to go and speak for all my fellow management colleagues there that our time at Sega was probably the best working time of our lives, and not just because we were doing something fun, but it was just such a wonderful experience and working together and solving problems and coming up with ideas that seemed impossible on paper, and somehow we pulled them off. If you read in the book about Sonic Tuesday, there's no way in the world that should have worked, and no company in their right mind would have gone and done it. But because there were just too many ways, it's like, okay, we need to go and ship by air to every 11,000 retailers overnight for the same price that it goes by ground. Okay, we ended up doing that and doing it without a hitch. But that was the thing. We could go and each give ourselves challenges and be able to go and make them work. And then, come Christmas Day, and you just think about the millions of, people who are opening a Genesis system or a Game Gear. So though it was an exciting and wonderful time. And we're all still friends to this day. And, could we have gone and done that? Potentially yes. But it was hard in terms of the relationship with Japan. We had to go and work as a team, going and seeing what was going on there, and try to avert some of the problems ahead of time. But I wish it could be so, but who knows? It's fun to speculate.
From the outside looking in, what was your initial reaction when it was first announced that Sega would be leaving the hardware business and focusing on software?
We weren't surprised. And I say the we because a bunch of us had been talking about it. And hardware is not an easy thing to go and do. As Tom mentioned in his interview, you don't make money on hardware. You make money on software. You basically sell hardware at cost or at a loss, and you got to make the money that's there. And so that's it. It's a courageous decision that you have to go and make. And the Sega had established some good brands along the way, spearheaded by Sonic. And so if you're able to go and do that without having to go and worry about hardware, and you're spending tens of millions of dollars advertising just to sell hardware. The thing about Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, Um, it wasn't about selling the game. It was about selling the game to somebody who didn't have a Genesis system. And it's the game that is going to go and make people make the decision to go and be able to do that. So um, there's a lot of strategic and a lot of financial reasons why a software only company makes sense. That's not to say that I don't love the hardware business. I really do. And um, it's interesting watching Sony and Microsoft go at it these days, and seeing them as they go and try to compete against each other. Um, I remember you asking Tom, could Sega ever get back into the hardware business? Um, you never say never. It's a tough decision, but you have to have phenomenal hardware, and more importantly, you have to have a broad line of phenomenal software to go with it.
Um, has has your opinion on Nintendo changed over the years with, and while they don't have the same kind of power monopoly of the industry anymore, albeit that wasn't their choice, um, di has your opinion changed on sort of what they stand for and who they are as a company?
Well, first of all, it is their choice because whatever strategic decisions you make and whether and what you want to go and do is totally up to them. So, could they have gone and gone more head to head against Sony and Microsoft? Yeah, because the market had changed, and a lot of it had changed because of what Sega did. We went and broadened the market and made it that not just for 6 to 12-year-olds. Um, you know, I don't pay a lot of attention to them today. I want to play Super Mario Kart 8. It looks phenomenal, and everybody's saying what a great game it is. And so they still have the ability to go and create amazing software. Um, and um, but they're their own little niche right now.
Uh, yeah, I agree with that actually. And one of the big things that a lot of people say in the current console generation that they believe it's more of a two-horse race and that it's very much Sony versus Microsoft and Nintendo doing their own thing. I personally would sort of, I think Microsoft and Sony are so similar. I would say if it were to be perceived as a two-horse race, where I believe it is a three-horse race, I would have grouped Sony and Microsoft together um, as one entity because in terms of multi-platform games, where I think the industry has changed the most in that there are less exclusives nowadays. Most things will come out for both platforms. Nintendo are kind of taking their own direction. Do you think, personally, that that's a good strategic move in terms of not just trying to outpower them in terms of hardware?
I think it's hard to go and let me take a step back. I think that there is so much momentum and so much interest being generated by Microsoft and Sony, and I wouldn't lump them together because yeah, there's a lot of crossover, but they're two different products and two major competitors, and you still need to make a decision on which one you're going to go for. And That for Nintendo, it's hard to rise above the clutter, um, which is very, very difficult to go and do. I go back to the Sega days, um, and to a certain extent, Nintendo right now is where TurboGrafx was. What people don't remember um, is that when we launched Genesis, NEC launched TurboGrafx. Literally within one day. We launched August 14th, 1989. They launched August 15th, 1989. And the retailers all thought that NEC was going to win. Here's this, megalith, this giant company that has a ton of money that's going to go and make people want NEC. And they thought that Sega would be out of business by the end of the year of 1989. And the exact opposite happened. We were the ones who had a 95% market share comes Christmas 1989, and NEC was just a small little player. They had 5% of the 16-bit market, which was very, very small. And it was hard for them, no matter what they did, to go and be able to get their voice heard. Because consumers were, of course, thinking about Nintendo and NES, because that was, you didn't play video games, you played Nintendo. And then here's this newcomer, the Sega arcade company is now doing Genesis. And that's what people were talking about. And no matter how much money NEC put out, nobody was listening to it. I think it's a similar situation, not as dire as the NEC business was, but it's hard for Nintendo to go and get their message out, which comes back to Super Mario 8 and just shows you the power of what Super Mario Kart, and it just shows the power of what one great game can do to help you go and get your voice heard. So that's kind of my view today.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And as is always said, software sells hardware. As I guess to wrap up, what would you say is your favourite or most memorable memory at Sega?
I'll give you three. One, launching the Blue Hedgehog. Two, which is probably number one, is Sonic Tuesday, because of how it changed marketing of video games and what we had to do to go and pull things off. So it's kind of like 1992. Everything we did in 1992 was amazing. And third, in terms of most memorable, was working with Michael Jackson on Moonwalker for a year. So those are my big three.
Well, it was fantastic to talk to you.
And number four was with just our whole team. We're still friends to this day, and we still talk.
I think
regularly.
That was my favourite thing about Console Wars as a book, is that you really you can feel the friendship that all of you at Sega had. You can really feel the relationship that everyone had, and that it wasn't just corporate business. It wasn't just walk into work, get on with daily stuff, and go home. You could really feel in the words that there was really something beyond that, which obviously must have driven you to work together a lot better at the company.
Yeah, we drove each other to be not only our best, but beyond our best, to accomplish things we never were able to think about. And we just had a great time. And it's, where are we going to go next? What are we going to go and do? And there's no crazy ideas, and let's go and do things. The problem I have with marketing in general and marketing today is a lot of it's done by checklist. You do this, you okay, next, and that's there. And we didn't believe in that. We wrote our own checklists, and what are we going to go and do, and how are we going to have fun? And both at in Lowwood Shores as we were working, or as we were traveling around the world with each other. We were just having a blast. And how can we go and have fun? Um, it was an incredible time. And you're absolutely right. Blake did a great job um, capturing all of that, and also capturing our voices. Um, I think one of the great compliments is one of the uh, people who have been working with us read the book and thought that Tom actually wrote it because it's like they could hear his voice and other people could hear my voice and Ellen Duff's voice and etc. Um, he was able to really go and capture um, us, um, and that's why we're excited about it. And we're also excited about the documentary, which will be coming out next year, and we're excited about the movie. I never thought that someone would be ever play me in a movie. So it'll be interesting.
In fact, that's one thing I thought I'd ask you. Have you had any thoughts in your mind of who you might like to play you in the movie?
As we have all decided, and I think our mutual answer is the answer is yes, and the answer is no. I won't tell you.
Okay.
Yes, it's become a running joke among the Segites as to who we think should play ourselves and each other. But we keep that for ourselves.
Oh, very well. It was fantastic talking to you, and thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to me. Those of you watching, if you haven't read Console Wars, buy it and read it. And if you have, why not read it again? Thank you once again for talking to me, and have a lovely weekend.
Same to you. Bye-bye.